As rightly so, questions are still being asked about the reason for a recent spate of mass shootings here in South Africa. A few weeks ago, 7 people were fatally shot at a tuck shop in Marion Hill in KZN. In the second weekend of July, a total of 21 people lost their lives in 3 separate shootings at taverns. That was in both Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal. Let's bring in well-known security analyst Rory Steyn joining us this morning. Rory, good to have you with us on the show. Always good to speak to you. Let's just start about your first impressions of where you think this is coming from. There's a lot of people, I'm sure you're aware of the conversations, are starting to tie in why these shootings are taking place at taverns specifically. What would your view be? Good morning.
Good morning to you both in studio. Good morning to everyone watching this morning. Where these shootings differ from the typical, if there is such a thing, typical mass shootings where you get a lone actor either inspired by some ideological craze or there's a severe mental health issue, these are perpetrated by several criminals at once. So you've got a mass shooting of, I don't know, maybe 10 to 12, even more shooters spraying bullets into a tavern. So that's very different from what we normally see. If you take the classic shootings like the Virginia Tech in the United States or Norway or New Zealand where the guy streamed it. So that points to the fact that our shootings are driven by probably criminality, certainly. Now, whether that's just blatant criminality is hard to say, but I cannot see a motive for somebody just deciding one morning, wake up, gather a few friends and say, let's go and shoot a tavern up. So it's either about turf between 2 gangs, or it's about turf between the establishment and its opposition hire somebody to go and disrupt their opposition's business. So that has not emerged clearly yet. And we must always remember it's prudent not to speculate on why these things happened, but rather let the hawks or the police, in whichever case it is, do the investigation. And there have been arrests, as we know, and those people have appeared before court already. And hopefully, if they are guilty, will receive lengthy prison sentences. I think what we need to do is perhaps look at the underlying causes, and we've speculated and commented on how criminals have become more and more brazen, sometimes with a decline in the ability of the police to actually do crime prevention and do policing in those areas. And just the easy access to illegal firearms. And we know that many of those are because of the fact that a criminal or a corrupted police officer in the firearms store sold over 2,000 weapons. I think it's more now, actually. I think it's much more than 2,000 weapons back into the hands of criminals. So apart from those that have traditionally been used because of our past and the liberation struggle, there was access to firearms. Now you've got firearms that either the public have handed into the police or the police have seized being sold back into criminal hands. And until we get a grip on that and address some of the underlying criminality and address some of the factors, the socio-economic factors leading to the desperation that we see amongst criminals, I'm afraid I don't see a rapid end to this, which is an awful thing. It's an awful prospect, because it could be your mom or my sister or somebody else's brother or father in the next tavern that is attacked. So clearly a real problem that we need to get a grip on early before we start seeing, heaven forbid, copycat activity. But I think this is criminality.
It certainly is, and I think just let me bring in some numbers just to give everyone watching some sense of what we're talking about. Some people calling this mass murders, and I suppose it's one way of explaining what this is. Mass murders where there are killings of more than 3 people in a single incident have increased by 50% between 2017 and 2020. And Rory, I want to pick up on what you said about the police, those firearms that were stolen. That's obviously one huge aspect of this. The other, of course, you can't help but get the sense that criminals in the country just get a feeling, a sense that they can just get away with it, because we had back-to-back tavern shootings, even though we'd covered it as stories. It was all over the media. Residents were aware of it. Tavern owners were aware of it. The police were aware of it. More importantly, we were seeing it weekend after weekend after weekend. There's just no regard for our police in this country. It's almost though the police, the criminals know the police can't do anything. Is that sense correct?
Yeah, so that's what I was referring to when I was talking about the brazenness of criminals. And I can tell you, because I met with certain high-ranking police officers just yesterday, and there are still very, very good policemen and women out there. And I feel for those that are at the coalface, that whose boots are on the ground, that so-called thin blue line, who are perhaps not supported to the extent that they should be. And as I keep saying, where is our crime intelligence? Because crime intelligence should be saying to the training division, hey, this is what the latest tactics employed by criminals are, and this is how we need to equip you as our men and women strapping on those bulletproof vests and arming themselves to go and face criminals with a plethora of firearms. This is how we need to, to counter that. So that's a question that I keep asking. I haven't yet received an answer, but I do keep asking that. My point is that there are, the police aren't all bad. I think they're under-resourced, they're under-equipped, they're not recruiting and training fast enough. All of those can be addressed, through effective management. But it is curious, don't you think, that your statistics say that 50% increase is since 2017. And I think under correction, because I'm not certain of these dates, but I think under correction, those firearms were sold to criminal gangs in 2016. So, those are dots that perhaps can be joined. And then you mentioned the fact that, we're talking about mass murder. Well, we are. The difference is that the mass murder that you typically see from a lone actor, as I said, either ideologically driven or through mental health, is it's one person, a lone actor. We don't like to use that other term. But this is different. This is a group of criminals. And you have to ask the question, if one tavern killing follows another within 24 or 48 hours, are there not dots to be joined? Is that an opposition or a retaliation? Is it a tit-for-tat tavern shooting? So I'm sure that those are things that the investigators are looking at. As I said, let's not jump ahead or jump the gun, because we must allow that investigation to take its course. And I think that those motives are going to be revealed in court.
And it's also a case of what to do with that information once it is revealed in court as well, isn't it? Rory Steyn, I always appreciate your time. It's one thing to get the information and to connect the dots, but then you've got to do something about it. And I think that's what much of the criticism is aimed at the SAPS. But as you say, there are good officers doing what they can, but severely under-resourced. Rory, always good to have you with us. Appreciate it. Rory Steyn, NSA Global Security Consultants, co-founder